Hi, you puddins. My name is Sade Page, also known as What Page Is It? And today I am very excited to get to share with you a opportunity of mine where I got to interview James Tynion IV, the most amazing, one of my favorite comic book writers. He's done Something is Killing the Children, A Nice House on the Lake, Department of Truth, a bunch of Batmans. I am beyond excited. Thank you again to my friends over at Comic Conline. You guys are the best. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this quick little interview. I did a video a while back on my Instagram asking you guys if you got to meet James Tynion IV, what questions would you ask him? And I did use a bunch of your questions as well as some of the questions I had about his, I guess, take on The Nice House on the Lake, which I am excited to share with you guys. Hope you enjoy. So I did ask my audience if they ever got to meet you, questions they would ask you.
All right.
They are very funny, and also I wonder the same things too.
Okay. All right.
So I want to know, we want to know, I should say, is what was some of the most valuable lessons you learned from Scott Snyder when he was new in the industry, and how, I guess, you overcome your writer's block?
Oh, those are both really good questions. I mean, the biggest thing that I learned from Scott right at the start is that you kind of have to put yourself in everything that you do. If you don't have an emotional connection to what you're writing, then you're going to lose your way. Because if the emotional heart of the thing is honest, then that's always going to be the compass that guides you back to the center of the story. The most specific, best piece of advice that he gave me right when I was getting started, when I was just doing, backup stories at DC Comics. He asked me if I could only write one comic book for the rest of my life, what would that comic look like and what would it feel like? Because for him, that comic was American Vampire. Because American Vampire is this big story, and it has all of these different elements of everything that he cares about American history, about horror, about, just the themes of the story all speak directly to him. And for me, the first book that I sort of came up with with that kind of, goal in mind was The Woods, which I did a number of years ago at Boom Studios. And really ever since then, every time I build a new original series, I try to think about that question, and I try to basically say, it's like, okay, if this was the only thing I could write forever, would I be satisfied with this book? And right now especially, I can say yes to all of them.
That's amazing. Another question I have is how this man managed to have the range he does, and also he manages to write so many comics on a daily basis. So basically, how and how.
Honestly, I kind of want to know that too.
I mean,
because you put out a lot. Do you sleep?
I don't sleep as much as I should. I mean, part of it is I spend a lot of time thinking about story, and the hardest things to crack with a story are what's the big idea and what's the way in, and then once you sort of lay out the ground rules of okay, this is where the story's going to begin, this is sort of what the middle looks like, and this is what the end game is, then you can kind of throw the map away, and then you can kind of just keep living in the world. So when I sit down to write a script, a lot of times I'm not figuring out necessarily what's happening in that issue. I'm just taking us one step closer to whether it's the midpoint of the series or the end game, and I kind of just let the characters guide me there. And then if the characters guide me in a way different than the map, then I throw out the map, because it is something where, especially when you're dealing with single issue comics, you need to let the single issue dominate. The priorities of the single issue are more important than the priorities of what you're going to do 10 issues from now. Because if you lose a reader tomorrow, you're not going to be able to get 10 issues from now. So yeah, that's sort of how I come at it, which means that, I write most of my issues pretty quickly. Most single issues take me about a day to write, but it's because I never stop thinking about comics, which is not necessarily the best thing for me, in terms of having a social life or anything like that. But it is, Like that's sort of how I do it. And I am doing too much, and I should not write as much as I do. But this year also has allowed me to work more because I haven't been traveling in the way that I usually travel. And when I'm traveling, that knocks like so much time to write off of everything. But right now I'm on top of all of my deadlines. I'm not behind on anything. My editors might disagree with me on that, but I'm not ahead on anything either. But I'm not behind.
You're right on time.
Yeah, maybe. I'm right on time. As of this morning, I am right on time. Ask me again on Friday, but yeah, no, it's just yeah, it's yeah, no, no, like yeah, sorry.
No, it's fine. I just want to pull that in.
Yeah.
Cool. Another one is okay, so it's full sentence. He goes, he's from Wisconsin, and a lot of his stuff is very dark and scary. I don't know if you've checked out his horror magazine, Razor Blades. I'd probably ask, what's the first memorable horror book or movie you read or saw to make this Midwest boy get so dark and creepy?
That's a really, really good question. And honestly, the funny thing with me is I used to think that horror was way too scary for me. I was a kid who had a lot of nightmares growing up, and I didn't want to have nightmares, so I didn't want to watch scary movies or engage with scary things. But I also always did a thing where whenever I went to the local Blockbuster, I would kind of walk down the aisle of all of the horror movies, and I wouldn't look at them straight on. I would just look at them out of the corner of my eye, and I would imagine what the stories were, and they scared the crap out of me. And then as I got a little older and I became a teenager, I finally was like, you know what? I am going to try a bit more horror. I started reading more horror novels. Because that was my first way in, because it was like, okay, if this is too scary, I can put it down. And then I started watching more horror movies where it was like, you know what? Some of these aren't actually so scary. But then I started watching even more movies, and I started realizing that the things that I was coming up with in my head were scarier than the things that were actually in the movies. So it's like me as a kid, like coming up with what I thought the movie Warlock was about. Like I thought that was going to be like, the cover was really scary. So I created this scary story in my head and all of that. And then, in and around all of this, I started realizing that I wanted to write. And it was in college that I realized that I wanted to write the stories that I'd been coming up with in my head, and actually try to capture that feeling of being afraid, especially as being a scared kid. That was the feeling that I was trying to capture more than anything.
I'm still scared of everything, but I'm glad you got through it.
I'm terrified of everything every day.
Even Thriller scared me as a kid. I would get nightmares, or even velociraptors just scare me for a minute.
Oh yeah.
And then I got over that because now I think they're awesome.
Waking up and turning on the news fucks me up.
For me, it was E.T. E.T. scared
I love
the
that
crap
though.
out of me.
See, that's now we're reversed.
The sound that E.T. The sound that E.T. makes
when he says Elliot.
Well, when he first appears in the cornfield, and there's this alien scream that he makes, which is one of the most upsetting noises that has ever been in a movie. And I had the recurring nightmares about E.T. for 5 years after I saw that as a kid. Nice. So in my head, E.T. is a horror movie. Yeah.
So would you ever base a horror book off of E.T. in your own way? Should that be a project?
There may be something to that.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, nightmares in general have always been an interesting subject matter to me, and I want to explore them some more.
So we're gonna go more psychology and the way the brain works with fear into more of your stories, is what you're saying?
Yeah, absolutely. While also definitely more monsters.
I don't think you're ever gonna laugh.
Try one more question, all right?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yes. So I want to go to The Nice House on the Lake.
Yes.
You saying Walter is based off of you.
Yeah.
Let's dive in.
Well, I mean, part of it was, a lot of the relationships between Walter and the different people in his life are based on relationships that I have with a lot of my friends, that, especially the friendships that I developed when I was in high school and in college, who I'm still friends with today. And, you know, I think when you look back at that time, you kind of realize the ways in which you were a good friend, but also the ways in which you were a bad friend. And I was definitely someone who I could, you know, I tended to be the person who like dictated what our group did. Like, I remember one time in high school, the like guidance counselor like called me a puppet master, and I loved that so much that I went and told all of my friends that the guidance counselor told me that. My friends were like, "You shouldn't be bragging about that." But I will say I'm still friends with all of these people. But it is something where I wanted to kind of tap into some of those instincts, because sometimes you try to make decisions for your friends that you think are the best choices for them, but it's also not good to try to make choices for how other people live their lives, and that can create a wedge in relationships and all of that. And I think that and those sorts of things, like the way those dynamics changed, really, like, you know, that was like those, you know, getting to explore those feelings allows me to kind of unpack a lot of my feelings about my 20s and my early 30s, and in a way that like The Woods was me unpacking a lot of my feelings about high school when I was in my early mid-20s. So it is something where this is a book that there is the most me in this book, down to the fact that Walter kind of looks like me, and you know, but it is also to that end, I will say that there's more to Walter than, you know, meets the eye, and not just in the scary way. So yeah, I'm like, I like this book because it is, you know, I think some of the other stuff I'm doing, even Department of Truth, which goes down all sorts of different rabbit holes because it's a book about conspiracy theories. I think The Nice House on the Lake is a book that deals with, you know, some of my complex feelings that I can't boil down to just a sentence, in a way that, you know, and to be honest, I didn't know if people were going to respond to it, because, you know, it doesn't really, you know, it doesn't handhold you in the way that, you know, sometimes I deliberately want to handhold my readers, because, you know, you want to let the reader know what's going on. But this is me trying to like get at something, and I think I'll know more fully what I'm trying to get at when it's all said and done. You know, I have my goals with it, but the book is still teaching me what it's about as I'm writing it, which, yeah, I find that thrilling.
Awesome. So it's kind of like you doing therapy with yourself and having to.
Oh, absolutely. That's what all these books are.
Yeah, and like, you're saying it's basically you. Like, are you coming across like any, or while you're writing it, did it kind of like make you have to go deeper, or like face certain things you probably didn't want to deal with?
Oh, absolutely. And frankly, that was the goal. Like, I wanted to make myself uncomfortable writing something, and I think that is, you know, like a lot of times when I'm writing horror, I'm trying to make someone else feel uncomfortable, but this one I'm trying to make myself feel uncomfortable. Yeah, I'm just really glad it's connecting with people.
I'm excited to see how it all plays out.
I hope you enjoy it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Honestly, that was such an amazing experience to be able to sit down with James and just talk with him. He's the person to talk to. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you would love to see more interviews, maybe I can get my guys over at Comic Conline, hook a girl up, and do a few more with other people, other creatives, and maybe see James again. Who knows? But a huge shout out again. Thank you to my friends over at Comic Conline, and thank you, James, for taking the time to chat with me. And I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye!